Hello friends of Powerhouse Bakery and all my favorite divas and dudes out there. I can't wait to show you what I have in store for you today. My name is Suzanne Parker and I'm the founder and CEO of Powerhouse Bakery. And I bet a lot of you know what we love to do here, and that is to create healthy. And really, I'm a teacher at heart, and what I love to do is help people learn how to create healthy on their own. And I had my sister-in-law over not long ago, and she saw that we were serving quinoa, and I could tell she was a little nervous because her past experience of having quinoa was not so good. And she, proceeded to be kind and try the dish that I had made, and she was surprised at how good it actually tasted, which is my favorite thing, is to help people realize that healthy can taste amazing. And so we went on to talk about what was in the quinoa, and I compared it to plain rice. If we were to cook plain rice and not add any jazzy ingredients and maybe turn it into Mexican rice or even Spanish rice, it would be pretty bland as well. And to top it off, quinoa is a whole grain, so it doesn't even give us as much sweetness in our salivary gland as perhaps rice would, because when rice is a simple sugar, we notice that sweetness right away when we put it in our mouth. Quinoa, on the other hand, has a fair amount of protein and fiber around that grain, so it doesn't immediately taste sweet. So that's another challenge when we try to serve something healthy like quinoa and hope that it's going to taste amazing. So what I want to show you today is how to create your very own spice. And of course, saucing it up with a special sauce is the way to do it. And so my hope is that we are going to create your own little creation of spice. And whenever you can sauce up something like quinoa or kind of a boring ho-hum rice dish with an extra splash of flavor, it really is a great chance to wow your customers, of course your family and friends as well. And so truly that's how I came up with the ginger lime dressing. I put together spices and flavors that I thought would be really a nice blend. And when I came up with all the different sauces, each of these has its own personality. So the ginger lime dressing is very light. Basically 3 ingredients: fresh ginger, some lime juice, and of course an olive oil base or any kind of oil base, and then perhaps a little something else to sweeten it up. So I use honey or even agave. The Suzette, on the other hand, has got lots of layers of flavor, and you've heard me talk about layers of flavor. With this one, I started with a traditional French vinaigrette. I studied in France, and I speak French, and so I love the culture, and they are so rich in flavors. So traditional French vinaigrette has 3 important ingredients: Dijon mustard, a really good olive oil, and a really good vinegar. Sometimes they will also add in shallots. And so with that idea, I started with a French vinaigrette, and then I wanted to add some extra fusion of other cultures. And so I also added a splash of sesame oil for that little bit of Asian touch. I added some chipotle chili for a little bit of that Central American flair. And I think it came out really nice. I rounded off the flavors with a little bit of garlic, which is very much that European flavor. And then I added a little hint of ginger also, which again marries those flavors of the Southeastern culture. And so the Suzette is really special, and I love it. The other one that I created is a little more on the saucy side. This one's called Sauce and Spicy Dipping. And you know me, I love to play on words. So this one is very much a rich, robust flavor. It started with a base barbecue sauce. And once I found out that the barbecue sauce traditionally is loaded with lots of high fructose corn syrup, we love to make our own barbecue sauce, which is really cooked down tomatoes to be very concentrated, and then adding some sweetness, so maybe some organic maple syrup or even some coconut sugar. And then we start adding in other flavors here. So in the sauce and spicy dipping, we add loads of smoked paprika for that nice smoky flavor. And because we know that the smoke flavor that comes in a bottle, or even that you that you create over coals or wood is not as healthy. So adding smoked paprika is something that I think is a wonderful variation that adds health rather than potentially adds in a carcinogen. And then we also add plenty of good roasted garlic, and then we add a little bit of vinegars also. So in those spices and sauces that I've created, I really realized that we've got to get some specific components in a good blend of any kind of sauce. And so what I've shown you here is sauces that make the dish. When building your sauce, think of pulling from 4 categories. We want something that's sweet, we want something that adds acidity, and of course savory, and then of course your oil base. So when we think of sweet, there's so many different directions that we can go in. And what I'm showing you here on my table is some of those directions. We can start with something like frozen fruit. I make a really wonderful sauce using organic blueberries. I grind them up in a little food processor, and it comes out as a fabulous starting point of one of my sweet sauces. So look at this beautiful blueberry. And that is an easy way to jazz up the sweet component of a sauce. So whether I'm going to use the frozen blueberries in a rich sauce that maybe I'm going to put onto a pork roast, or maybe pork chops, or even a no meat loaf, adding the sweetness of fresh or frozen berries is a fabulous way to add a wow experience without just putting in a bunch of sugar. Another sweet component would be some spices. This is absolutely fabulous spice. You can probably recognize it by these beautiful little seed pods. So allspice is one that I use a ton. I'm debuting, in fact, a new spice for Powerhouse Bakery lineup, and it's called Sweet Spice. And it's going to showcase allspice as one of them. But look at this beautiful seed. And when I grind it using my coffee grinder, it's so easy to just grind it and add it to a sauce. And so make sure you've got a good little coffee grinder in place here. You can always use a coffee grinder that is really washed out thoroughly to make sure that it doesn't have other flavors in it. Or you can have one that's dedicated just to your sweet spices. And what I mean by that is coriander, cardamom, of course cinnamon, allspice, and cloves. Those are all kind of the sweet family. And all of those go great in any kind of sauce that you're trying to dream up. And so every time you're ready to make a fresh sauce, just grind it up and then add it to your spice. So this is going to be another one that we can add to. And then we go to the other little more exotic sweet spices. This one is tarragon, and it is a fabulous flavor that comes from the Northern European flavors. So the French use tarragon as well as the Italian flavors, and then you even see it in some of the African dishes. Tarragon is really nice. It reminds me a little bit of licorice, but it's softer. It's almost a blend of licorice and lavender. So this is one, again, that you could put into your spice grinder, or you could just let it sort of soften in some of the olive oils. So this would be a really fun one to add to our mix. Again, sweet spices could come from fruits, it could come from hard pods like the anise or cloves, or it could come from leaves like the tarragon. You could also use paprika. This is probably my most favorite red spice. And it has a wonderful smoky flavor. You can also get a sweet paprika that will have a little more sweet edge to it. It reminds me almost of smelling chamomile tea. So paprika is one to really experiment with when you're looking at your category of sweet. And then, we could always look at fruits. And so as we move down my continuum, I put orange juice in the acid side, but don't forget, orange juice concentrate is easy. You have it in your freezer, you can keep it there. You can pop open the plastic lid here, take out a tablespoon and put that plastic, actually it looks like aluminum, but it's really hard plastic, right back on it, and it'll store in the fridge for months, or freezer. And so this could go into the sweet category, or it could go into the acid category. So while I put it here on our sweet category, just know that it's going to show up again. And then we could of course use sugars. So coconut sugar is a great one, not to mention maple syrup would work as in your sweet category. And then of course I mentioned here mango, and then the sweet spices. And then let's go to the acid category. So when I think of acid, the first one that I really prefer are things that are citrus more than acidity per se. But you can use these little great concentrates of lemon and lime. You can find these in the produce section. They're truly fresh. And I think these are always better than trying to get the ones that are from concentrate. So a perfect option right there. Also, you can never go wrong with the fresh. And what's a real bonus when you use fresh lemons or limes or even oranges, you can always get the zest as well. So make sure you have a zester handy as one of your base kitchen items, because you're always going to want to zest and then squeeze out that lemon juice. And I want to show you a fantastic bag that I found. This is how now I store all of my citrus fruits in these beautiful green bags. And it's called the Debbie Meyer green bag. Let me show you. This is such a find. One of my dear friends shared it with me, and now we love it because it keeps our lemons and limes fresh for at least 2 weeks, maybe even more, in the fridge. Great find. You can get these online, and now Powerhouse Bakery won't do without them. It makes a huge difference. Apples and even berries and bell peppers last so much longer. So great find. Make sure you order one as soon as you can. And so as we go through our acidity options, having the little bottles holds up great in your fridge. So I really encourage you to have these handy. So you'll have some fresh on your counter or in your fridge in these famous green bags, or you could have some of the juice ready to go if you just want to make it super quick. Of course, the freezer as well for that orange juice concentrate. And then one of my absolute favorites is rice vinegar. It, of course, lasts much longer than any of these other items because it's something that can be stored in your pantry. Once you open it, I do recommend you put it in the fridge, but it is a great element that adds gentle acidity and even a touch of sweetness. There's all different varieties of rice vinegar also. You can get some that have more or less citrus added. You can get the original, you can get lots of them, but I really encourage you have this as a base ingredient in your pantry. And then another little secret are these wonderful essential oils. Be sure to look for ones that are food grade. That's kind of a terminology now, but honestly, if you're getting lemon or tangerine or orange, they're from food and it's pretty safe, even if it doesn't have food grade on it. But Young Living as well as doTERRA are great companies that you might even know somebody that's selling them. So it's a really nice way to go, and it just takes a few drops and you get a fantastic way to add in a lot of zing for your lemon or your lime. So there's my citrus or acidity. Remember too that the vinegars have lots of variety. You could get balsamic vinegar that would have a little richer, more savory element to it. Champagne vinegars, red wine vinegar, all of those are going to have a little higher level of acidity and a little less of the citrus notes. But those are all going to work beautifully. And so just finding what really fits your palate is the way to go. So experimenting is where it's really fun. So now we move to the next column, which is savory. So under savory, we've got garlic, we've got ginger, we've got soy sauce, cocoa aminos, not to mention Worcestershire, and then your basic barbecue sauce. So understanding where those savory components line up is going to be really helpful in creating your very own spice or your own sauce. So let's look at the cocoa aminos. This is kind of popular right now, and its big claim to fame is that it's soy-free, unlike a typical soy sauce, which we assume is going to have soy in it. But notice that this one, this Tamari brand, is also gluten-free, soy-free. And so we're really seeing lots of great variations on the market if in fact you need to stay away from gluten or soy. Now, the cocoa aminos also has some other front of pack information. It talks about being non-GMO and USDA organic, and is even part of the Whole30 approved, which, let's face it, diet programs sell products. And so because this is over $5 a bottle, we know that part of those proceeds are going to pay for all of these markings on the front of pack. Does it make it better than a plain old soy sauce or one that happens to also be gluten-free, soy-free? Not necessarily. The flavor will be a little different, but in general, they're both very savory, which means they're high in salt. They're going to have the umami flavor to it, which is kind of what we call the meat flavor, and it adds a depth and richness to any sauce. So they're certainly great to have around. I'm not totally convinced that it's worth getting the cocoa aminos as far as the price, but some people swear by it, that it tastes better, it's lower in salt, and it has some health properties to it. But let's be sure that when we question that health properties, we look at the ingredient label. Here it says certified organic fair trade coconut blossom nectar, water, and certain kind of salt. So it's basically a sweetness and a salt put together. So coconut blossom nectar is still going to be a sweet component that has been fermented so that it has those umami notes to it. So it's a great product. It fits in Whole30, but so do a lot of other products. And again, it's a great way to add in a richness and a depth of flavor that you really need in any nice sauce that's going to have, especially a component that goes with meats or something that's a little bit heavier like mushrooms if you want a vegan dish, or even lentils. It's a great component. And then, of course, I love having garlic and ginger. So whether you use it from a little jar or you make your own fresh, you can't live without it. And truly, I think that when we're using garlic, you can't get better than fresh garlic. I always work with my team and all my students, and sometimes they say, well, what do you think about doing the garlic from the jar? Can we get by with that, the little tubes of garlic? And I say you can in a pinch, but if you use a really good quality garlic, you don't need too much anyway. And doing a quick little chop of some garlic cloves doesn't take much time, and it's so beautiful. The aroma that comes from a fresh garlic clove cannot be paralleled with something from a jar. And so sometimes I try to teach my students that less is really more, meaning that you don't need a whole lot of garlic to get a whole lot of flavor. So whenever possible, just chop up your own little cloves, and you've got this beautiful, ready, savory, and sublime nuttiness that comes only from fresh garlic. So here we have our beautiful components of sweet. We've got some acidity, we've got the savory, and now we got to look at the oils. So how do we have a healthy sauce or salad dressing? And since the base is oftentimes oil, how do we know which one's going to be the best? So let's go over some of those. From Europe, we have the fantastic olive. And of course, now we also have olives growing all over the world, but it's really known for the flavors of Italy and France. And you can't go wrong with a good quality extra virgin olive oil. If you wanted to pick one that is just from one region, expect to pay a little more, but you might really want that particular flavor, and it might be worth it to you. But in general, any basic extra virgin olive oil is still going to have the same quality of flavors and the same nutrition quality for sure. And unless it says it's from a certain area, you can pretty much assume that it'll be from a couple of different places. So look here, this HEB brand is from Italy, Portugal, Greece, and Tunisia. So a great olive oil is going to have a little bit of a fruitiness to the flavor profile, especially when we're looking at a mixed blend. So let me show you how it's going to start to change as far as the flavors go. This one is pretty bright green, and this means that it's from fresher olives. They're going to be a little more unripe when they're picked, and so it has that beautiful bright green flavor, which is lovely. If you wanted a more mellow flavor, not quite so fruity, then you'd want to get an oil that is not extra virgin. It might be just your standard olive oil, and of course that'll be a lot cheaper. It still has the same nutritional properties, it just happens to have a more mellow flavor, and that might work perfectly for your salad dressing, especially if you don't want that strong olive flavor to pop through. And when you've got all these other flavors dancing around in your palate, you probably wouldn't even notice if you're using a lower press quality of that olive oil. Now let me show you another oil. This one, toasted sesame oil, I absolutely love. It is such a great flavor. Oops, I got one that's not even opened. if you can look, HEB has a great variety of oils now, and anytime you're looking at a seed, the oils are going to have all the great properties. They're going to have polyunsaturates as well as monounsaturates, and that's what you want in any oil. So sesame oil is really special because it has that toasted, kind of that sublime nuttiness that we love, and it's going to really add to the components of our savory side of those flavors. So sesame oil, fantastic. And here we have two other ones that I really think are fun and worth mentioning. Hazelnut oil. So again, a nut oil. We've looked at the oil from an olive, we've looked at the oil from a seed, and now we're looking at oil from a nut. I love hazelnuts. It's really special. And you probably, if you've been to any of my classes, know that I'm a real fan of walnut oil too. So this brand is one that I would love for you to look for, and it has fantastic qualities of flavor, very subtle. And so if you're going to use these pricier oils, you don't need to have too much of the other components of the flavor profile. Like that ginger lime dressing that I mentioned, it just has a few ingredients. So sometimes you want to cut it down a little bit if you really want to highlight some special flavor in your salad dressing mix. Now look at this one. So it's lighter in color. So we've got the hazelnut oil that's very light in color and flavor, the sesame oil that's a little bit richer, and it's really going to show that by its color, and then we have the traditional olive oil that is fantastic. Now we're going to want to build our sauce with something that is a little bit acidic, a little bit of savory, and then of course a little bit of sweet. So let's get building. And I'm going to top my spaghetti squash and my quinoa as a finished product. So let's have some fun. The first thing I'm going to do is start with my hazelnut oil because it's very light and delicate. So we're going to add a little bit of, let's see, a little bit of lemon essential oil. So we've got hazelnut and a little bit of essential oil, just a couple of drops, and some rice vinegar. Okay, so now I've got my acidity and I've got my beautiful oil. Now I'm going to go to the savory side, and again, I want to go light. So I'm going to use a little bit of my smoked paprika, just a little bit for color, and I want you to see how pretty this turns out. And I'm doing small batches because the way the French do this is they build their salad dressing in the bowl, and then they add their greens on top of it. Super simple. So all I need to do is add a touch of sweet. Now, remember I mentioned that the citrus can sometimes act as the sweet. I added a little bit of essential oil and I added the rice vinegar. In this case, I'm counting the rice vinegar as the sweet. So this one is ready to go. And I'm going to dress my beautiful spaghetti squash with this hazelnut vinaigrette. And just to finish it off to make it extra pretty, in my grinder here, I've just chopped a few walnuts. So I'm going to put that on the top. Walnuts and, of course, pistachios go really well together, just to finish it off. And then maybe some parsley to add green, because we know that the eyes eat first, and we got to make it pretty. So there we go. So simple. Dish number one. All right, now let's try one more. We've got our olive oil and our sesame oil. We've got to go through the cycle again. With my sesame oil, I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. And really, this when you think of ratios, you want to start with a 1 to 4. Meaning, if you have 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, you want 4 times as much of your oil. And so you just add that up. That means it's going to be 4 teaspoons, which is a tablespoon, and a little bit more. So start off small. You can always add more. That's about a teaspoon. And now I'm going to add my savory. And of course, I love to add some garlic. Add a little bit of my chopped garlic. There we go. Oh, this is going to be beautiful. And now I've got to add a touch of sweet. So I'm going to add in my beautiful blueberries. And again, this is a really fun blend because adding the savory of garlic with a little bit of sweet from the blueberry is such a great combination. Right along with that, the blend of the sesame oil, it's going to go right on top of my quinoa. And the quinoa can really handle a little bit richer spice because it's a grain and it needs some more pizzazz sometimes to really dazzle the taste buds. Yeah, that's going to be great. And of course, I'm still going to want to add some color to my quinoa. And in my grinder here, I put some rosemary so I can have that ready to go. Just as another little herb to top it off with. There we have it. Okay, last one before I'm out of time. I promised you I would use these beautiful spices. So here is my tarragon and of course my allspice. So they are both in the same category. So I'm going to do one for you now, and then in my recipes I'll give you the other one. Here I've got my classic olive oil, and I'm going to add in a little bit of my allspice. So olive oil, a little bit of allspice. I'm going to stir that around. And so being able to kind of mix on the fly is so much fun. You want to be able to think about what flavors are going to go well with your entree and how do you kind of balance them together. And it takes some practice, but I think having the sweet spices with a little bit of orange is going to be perfect. So I'm going to whip this out and we're going to have a touch of orange concentrate right in there. And again, I use this orange juice in lots of different recipes. So I keep it in the freezer. This just happens to be a brand new one. And you, of course, can use tangerine juice. Tangerines are in season right now, and it's a great way just to squeeze in some fresh flavor. But I wanted to show you that taking it right out of the concentrate is perfectly fine. So I'm going to start off with just a small amount. It's about a teaspoon and a half. So now I've got the sweet spice of the star anise. I've got a little bit of olive oil. I've got the orange juice. And now we just have to add in a little bit of savory. All right, here we go. Let's add in a little bit of our soy sauce. Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. There we go. So just a little splash. And always taste it. Make sure you're happy with it before you put it on your dish. That is going to be absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to use this on a mushroom saute and glaze it at the end. So there you have it. We've got so many cute ones. Let me find your little bottle. Here we go. And I'm going to shake it up and we'll be able to serve it on our dish. I always have a few little jars ready to go. That way you can shake them and they'll stay in your fridge. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I can't wait to have you tell me what kind of sauces you are creating. So remember, it's simple. 4 categories, something sweet, something savory, and don't forget a really good oil, and you've got it made. Good to see you. Hope to have you back soon.